Hello, and welcome to myfinanceteacher.org. A quick news for our website. We now have our first fictitious portfolio. We'll probably have another one. And in this one, we're going to measure our investment performance in a little bit more detail. And you can see the full info on this portfolio over here on the left side in the menu. So just another product for the members at myfinanceteacher.org. In this video, though, let's have a look at a range of markets very briefly. Before we continue, let me remind you guys to subscribe to the channel if you haven't and click that bell notification. Thanks a lot. And let's start with gold. As I mentioned over the last couple of weeks, gold did have a chance to keep inching upwards towards that resistance zone at $1,800. And as you see at the moment, the spot gold price is just several cents above $1,800. In my personal portfolio, I still have a sizable allocation to precious metals related assets. As I mentioned in some of my previous videos, my allocation at the moment is around 87%. But because the short-term daily cycle is nowhere near young at 33 days, because the 14-day RSI is getting close to overbought, and because the ongoing intermediate cycle is not young at all as well at 101 days, usually these last for about half a year, I really want to be cautious on gold at the moment, so I keep my stop losses tight and I keep tightening those stop losses as precious metals are moving upwards. As you see here, for example, yesterday I gave an update to the members at myfinanceteacher.org on the tightening of those stop losses. Next, looking at the optimism index for gold. Again, although in the short term there is a chance that gold breaks above the resistance zone at $1,800, although I think this resistance will prove to be a formidable one, still, in the intermediate term, it's time to be somewhat cautious as the optimism index is pretty high. It's above its red line. Next, let's move into the general stock market. This is S&P 500. With the recent strength in S&P 500 over the last, about a week or so, there is a good chance that this low, the recent low on the 29th of June, was the end of the previous short-term daily cycle. And in that case, if the S&P 500 is in a new short-term daily cycle, there is a potential for upward momentum for another 2 to 3 weeks. Plus, if you look at this chart, you might kind of see this somewhat almost of a symmetrical triangle. The height of the triangle is 260 points or so. Looks like a few days ago S&P 500 broke to the upside of this triangle. So a measured move based on the height of this triangle would project somewhere into 3380. That's actually very close to the strong resistance at the February highs. Looking at RSI, it's not that close to overbought levels yet, so there is a good chance, I think, that over the next couple of weeks maybe S&P 500 will strengthen noticeably. So for that reason, I posted another update yesterday to the members at myfinanceteacher.org on the trade I was taking both in my personal portfolio in S&P 500 as well as the first trade in the fictitious portfolio. But on the other hand, the trade is only involving a small amount of capital and I'm having a relatively tight stop loss on that one because looking at optimism index, although in the short term there is a chance for S&P to keep moving higher, in the intermediate term though, again, optimism is redlining and it's time to be somewhat cautious. Next, looking at fear and greed index from CNN. Although fear and greed index has dropped over the last few weeks from 66 down to 48, it's still early to jump into the deep side of a trade in the general stock markets. We see from this timeline that intermediate cycles usually top when the fear and greed index is somewhere between 70 and 80. Recently, this index was at about 66, and although we've dropped, and although I'm trying that trade, and although there is a chance for a short-term bounce up, in general, over the intermediate term, it's too early to jump in. As you see again, a nice entry point is usually when fear is high and optimism is low. So some caution is advised. Although looking at the futures, despite a red candle on S&P yesterday, so far futures are nearly 0.5% up. Next, looking at Nasdaq, one of the viewers on YouTube has actually asked me to look at Nasdaq recently, and the reason I chose a trade on S&P 500 rather than Nasdaq is that, as you see, Nasdaq is a little bit hotter compared to S&P at the moment. We've already seen a couple of pokes through the upper range of the Bollinger Bands. The intermediate cycle is on day 106 as well, so the cycle is not young. And the 14-day RSI is much closer to the overbought levels compared to S&P 500. So again, another hint towards some caution in the general stock market. Next, let's have a quick look at crude oil. It's basically flat over the last week or so. 14-day RSI is also very flat. Bollinger Bands are narrowing. So not much news since our last quick look at oil. Although in the very short term, there is a good chance crude oil might inch upwards towards that resistance from the 200-day moving average. But in general, I think a violent move is coming because everything is just flattening out and the Bollinger Bands are so narrow. Although a violent move might actually happen on either side, I think it's much more likely on the downside rather than on the upside sometime over the intermediate term, as the intermediate cycle is not young anymore, it's at 79 days old. Usually these cycles last for about half a year. So I'm not holding energy at the moment, besides some hodl positions related to dividends. In my trading portfolio, I'm not holding any energy related assets, and I'm waiting for a nicer entry point. When this point arrives, I will definitely make a note for the members at myfinanceteacher.org within the fictional portfolio number 1. And a last quick look at optimism index on crude oil. Although over the last few days optimism index has dropped from around 55 to 43 at the moment. Again, as you see, it's still pretty early to jump into the energy. As you know, usually it's a good idea to buy an asset when the blood is flowing on the streets, when everybody is pessimistic, when nobody wants this asset, when the optimism index is low, when it's close to this green line, that's when you want to enter. So still early, hence I'm waiting. For now though, that's all. I wish you a very nice day. I also wish you to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, remember to hit that notification bell, and good luck in your trades.